Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Janice Porter. We are here to talk about relationship marketing, maximizing LinkedIn to build relationships, business, and results. We are going to be talking about networking, connecting, and following up. Janice does LinkedIn training. It's a huge part of her business, and she believes that all business professionals need to have a magnetic LinkedIn profile, and that LinkedIn is the platform for attracting new clients, strategic partners, and referrals. So Janice, glad to be talking to you.
Thank you so much. I'm here.
I'm super glad to have you. And as you know, there's like almost literally like a million social networks. There's always like just the overwhelm of like, what app do I use? And then even within those social networks, you always hear about new features like LinkedIn Live, LinkedIn Pulse. What do we need to know about LinkedIn? And if we are not using it, what can motivate us to use it more or get some results from it?
That's a good question. I always tell people, actually, I ask people when I'm first talking to them about it, if they're asking me about LinkedIn, it's two things for me. One is if you are in business at all today, you need to be on LinkedIn and have a profile that works for you because it is very highly indexed by Google. So when somebody Googles you, you want to see good stuff, and it can be done for free. So why not, right? Take advantage of that and show the best you. Secondly, if you're in business, you and your clients, your prospects hang out on LinkedIn, then that's where you should be prospecting, right? That's where you should be.
I agree completely. And it seems like LinkedIn solves the problem of, well, I have trouble, getting the emails delivered, and even to do email marketing, someone needs to find me, someone needs to get on my list. And then you think, well, okay, no problem. I'll use Facebook. Everyone's on Facebook, but then on Facebook, no one is in the buying or selling mode. No one wants to deal with that. They're on Facebook to look at the cat videos. And then LinkedIn is such a weird, in a good way, environment, because I log on to LinkedIn. I probably go maybe 3 times a week now. But maybe even as far back as a year ago, it was like once a month. But every time I go in, my inbox is full of messages. And sometimes I don't want to hear from a bunch of people, but a lot of the times I'll say, these would make good podcast guests, or these would be good people to be joint venture partners. Or these would be people who are good to at least like get on a Zoom call and see if I could like sell them something. So I can't quite like articulate it, but I go on LinkedIn and I don't mind being sold to for some reason.
Interesting, because I'm still hearing a lot of people. There's two things that are happening over the last couple of years. A lot of people were fed up with Facebook and how now you have to actually pay to advertise to get any kind of traction. So they're moving over to LinkedIn. Now, those that did it wrong on Facebook are still going to do it wrong on LinkedIn. So we're getting a little bit more promos and pitches and things in introduction emails that people, or messages that people hate. You hate being pitched to. So there is a strategy, there is a protocol that makes more sense, but it is a business platform, and therefore business can get talked about and done faster. So you're right in that respect, that it's not about cat videos, it's about business, but you still have to be careful that you're not, pushing and pitching people.
Right. Don't just take the same exact cookie cutter canned message and blast it to 5,000 different people. And so what's your strategy? Because you hear about things like, look at your profile and put your resume on there. You hear things like a network worth your connections. You hear things like, well, look at who your best customer is and try to find similar people on LinkedIn who kind of maybe fit a similar template. But what's your approach to this? If we go on LinkedIn, we say, okay, I've seen the error of my ways. I'm doing nothing, or I'm doing it wrong. What is the patented trademark Janice Porter way of going about this?
Well, good question. So I see LinkedIn in 3 buckets. I see the very first thing you need to do is have a fully optimized profile. But what does that mean? So I take people through the entire profile. And the most important thing I will tell you is what I call the 4 H's: the header, which is the background image; the headshot, which is where your headshot should be; your headline, which is the piece directly under your name; and then just below there is the about section, and I call the 4th H the hook. The hook is the beginning of your about section, because you only see 4 lines now. It used to be 2, 4 lines before you click see more. So you want to make people see more. You want to make them press that button. So that plus all the minor things that become the details that if you're using LinkedIn for building relationships, they're the key pieces, the pieces near the bottom of the profile that people never look at. Those are the conversation starters that will help you if you want to build relationships on LinkedIn. And so I'm always looking, for the little pieces down below, like I'm going to give you an example. So you had a company, or you were working for a company for many years called Double Agent Marketing. I love that name. It makes me curious. Most people wouldn't go down that far. I noticed that you were endorsed by somebody or got a recommendation from somebody quite a long time ago, but I think I know that person. So, things that could be conversation starters and so forth in reaching out to you. Once you've got your profile up to snuff, that will work for you, then the second bucket for me is building relationships. It's how do you connect to people? Who do you connect to? What kind of searches do you do? What do you do with people who reach out to you and want to connect? What do you look at? Do you just say yes? Do you say no? Or do you investigate a little bit? And then how do you start those conversations? Obviously, you have to have an end point in mind, and mine is always like, is this person somebody that maybe I could work with? I'm curious about, I want to take it a little bit further. So my goal is to always take it offline and have a conversation, phone, Zoom, in person, whatever. And the third bucket is content. So people who want to show their expertise in their field, want to be the authority in their field, want to be more seen on LinkedIn, should be posting on a regular basis. I don't post that much because I'm more about relationships, although it would help me to post a little bit more, I'm sure, because, there's people that love to write and put their content out there, and then it's more passive in what happens out there. I want to meet you and talk to you. So different ways to do things, but there is a strategy around who to reach out to and know how to search properly and what to do and so on.
Well, interesting. And I mean, that's already a lot to think about. And just right off the beam there, the kind of what was going through my head was when you say there's this headline and there's this title and there's like this tiny little bit that people see when they first go on your profile, it conjures up all these thoughts of like copywriting or search engine optimization, and just kind of treating it in a similar mindset of someone, they land on your page, they're only going to be looking for X number of seconds. You need to make some kind of first impression. So that's even interesting to think about in general, because it's easy to look at your whole profile and say, well, where do I begin? I look at this, look at that. But then you're saying, well, if someone finds us, what is their first impression of us? What do they see at the very top right there as far as like job title and those sorts of things? And that's interesting. And then you're saying that as far as these buckets, there's focus on yourself first, there's your profile, and then there's the bucket of the connections, and then there's the bucket of content. And the content piece, like I didn't even know that you could blog on LinkedIn until maybe like 2 years ago. And I've probably blogged maybe like once per quarter or so. And I really like that that's an option, because there's the kind of otherwise no outlet, right? Like you could blog on your own website, but then, well, good luck getting blog comments these days. You could blog on Facebook, but no one's going to read a big long thing on Facebook. That's not what it's there for. And then if you want long form content, there's the YouTube or the podcasting. But until I noticed that there was a little space for you to add your own content, it was like there was no place left on the internet to have that kind of long form blog post. And then every now and then and it's very rare, but I'll make kind of a long post and I'll send my email subscribers to it, and I'll get a few comments and likes and views. And I'll be like, well, cool, I've got kind of that value demonstrating a piece or whatever that shows that I'm kind of like established. I know about these things. And in the back of my head, I was thinking what you were saying a few minutes ago of that search engine juice. That if we post on our own site, there's always a struggle of like getting ranked. But if you post on LinkedIn, well, then that's already a site that Google loves. So there's a lot to think about there. And then, so yeah, so you're saying the end goal is to get to that really scary part, right? Of getting people offline, of getting people on like a Zoom call, like we're on now. And so, how do we get there? Because I'm thinking that many times I'll have a virtual assistant login about like once every 2 weeks. And when I get all these kind of inbox messages, I'll be like, well, throw out the spam. But if someone seems interesting, then get them on a like a podcast interview like this, so at least way it's kind of a win-win. Even if like a deal is not made, at least we promote them. And then if they're asking about like a certain sort of service, then I'll reply directly and be like, well, can we like arrange like a call or something? And so what's your advice maybe after hearing that, of like like what are we missing, or what do we need to know about getting to kind of the meeting or the sale or whatever that goal is?
Well, there's a lot in what you just said. And can I just go back for a second to when you did that first impression piece? I also like you to think of it as above the fold, I call it. So the old head newspaper headline thing, above the fold, when the newspaper isn't open fully, what do you see? Well, you see all those things that I mentioned. And so your first impression, by the way, people used to say it took 7 seconds to make a first impression. It's like this now. So, really that background image needs to be there. You need to use that as your marketing tool as well, right? So I just wanted to mention that. And you said something else also earlier about your resume. LinkedIn, don't think of it as a resume anymore. Maybe that's how LinkedIn started, but LinkedIn is really about, it's your profile. So it's an insight into you and your personality and your how you serve people. Because if they read, for example, below the fold, the about section, they should be able to see from there how you serve them. And therefore you're separating people. They're self-selecting. This is someone that wants to find out more about you versus someone who doesn't like your personality or whatever, that shows through in that piece. So that's a piece I wanted to just clarify. And then you asked about, how do you know? So unless your VA is a clone of you, how do they know what you will find curious or interesting of who reached out to you? That's my first curiosity piece there, because I don't know, if you're building relationships, for me, it's about me doing it so I can build the relationships with people. And I think you're very brave to say, well, if you think to your VA, if you think this is someone that, let's get them on the podcast, you're flying blind, really, in a way, which I kind of admire. It's kind of fun, because we haven't met before this. And but you're good at, interviewing, and you're comfortable doing that and going on the fly. Whether it goes past that, I guess, is the risk, right? So I always look for ways to begin a conversation online with someone. So here's a little tip for you. If this person is reaching out to you, then obviously they're active on LinkedIn. So the first thing I would always do is look at their profile to see if it means anything, if something grabs me, so that if I do accept their connection request, now I have something to go back and start a conversation with. My first message to them is always, thank you for reaching out to connect. I noticed that you blah, 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 because that way they know you've paid attention to them. Because I'm not going to go back and say, hey, yeah, I think you need this, blah, blah, blah. So you want to be able to build the know, like, and trust as quickly as possible, build rapport.
And you mentioned that a few times so far, and I'm going to try to like burn that into my brain of what do I notice on someone's LinkedIn profile. And that's like, it's like the most obvious thing, but I always forget until like right now, you have my LinkedIn open in a tab and I have your LinkedIn open. And it's like plain as day. You scroll down to kind of that bottom there, and there's so many conversation starters, right? There's like mutual friends. There's, do we both like Gary Vaynerchuk or something? And then something that I notice that I do sometimes is I love looking at a person's activity, and you can't really do that as much on Facebook. I can be like, oh, well, Janice liked this post, or she commented on that post. And it's like, you scroll down and you like instantly get kind of like a first impression there. And so you're saying that maybe me, especially me personally, I need to maybe put a little bit of my own time more into this prospecting. That way I can notice things and kind of like customize more of my message. That way it's not just a guess from the virtual assistant. And are you one of those people that says like have a certain quota, like put in, 20 minutes every Friday or talk to 20 people? Because sometimes I'll be in the mood to go and send some messages, but it never lasts. And it's never consistent. I know that it's like you always hear about like, well, you need to be sending X number of messages per week. So what is your advice on showing up and it actually being you and not an assistant, but also sticking with it every single week?
Well, I think it depends on the goal, right? I mean, if you're using LinkedIn to grow your business through you being more visible, and it's teaching people, things that you are the authority on. So therefore they're learning from you. That's one thing. And if what your content is doing is getting engagement, that of course means that those people are interested in what you have to say. So now you have to nurture those relationships by reaching out and checking. Like it's just a puzzle, right? So some people are more comfortable being on there on a regular basis. I think regular is important, but how often is up to you. You don't have to be on LinkedIn 4 times a day for 20 minutes or even every day, but you do need to be consistent. So if you're on there twice a week, then be on there twice a week, because otherwise some of those messages and comments, notifications that come to you are stale, right? So to me, that's the key is be consistent and know what your purpose is for using the platform. It's so powerful and so underutilized, really.
I agree. And so what you're making me think of is maybe I need to look at and see like how often am I already on there when it's actually me, and then just repeat that instead of trying to invent some sort of a schedule that I even know deep down I'm not going to follow. So that's
what you forget it, right? Yeah.
And what you are also mentioning there, I was on a walk earlier and I was thinking a similar thing about how, like, especially with social media, it's so easy to just go through the motions and say, well, I don't know why I'm on this platform. I don't know why I'm liking these posts, but I just am. But then what you're saying is look at the results, and you put forth an effort and you say, if this led me to 5 conversations, 5 deals, 5 podcast appearances, whatever, then I can backtrack and say like, okay, well, I know that for every 20 minutes I spend on LinkedIn, it equals this number of dollars. Or if every time I message this person, I know that it will translate to like $10, then that seems like a lot more fun and a lot more of saying, and like, okay, this is the input, this is the output, as opposed to just wasting time because that's easy.
Yeah, it's easy to go down that rabbit hole on any platform. But like, I often get people who'll say to me, well, I've got to get my LinkedIn up, I've got to get my Facebook up and my Instagram up and blah, blah. And I'm like, why? Where are your clients? Focus on that area. If LinkedIn is it, great. If it isn't, fine, go where you need to be. Maybe you have 2 target audiences. Fine. One's on Instagram and one's on LinkedIn. Completely different audiences, completely different platforms, and completely different ways to act on there, so to speak, right? Because they're different. So really be clear on whether it's worth spending the time or not. And, it all depends on you and what you do. I never think that people all have to be somewhere, but I do, obviously, I lean towards LinkedIn because if you're in business, it makes the most sense.
I love that. Where are your clients? So now I don't have to feel guilty for not spending any time on Pinterest, because
Exactly.
what's the point? It's just another box to be ticked, and all those things can come over time. So this is all great to think about. And so as we're kind of approaching near the end of our conversation here, is there something that is really underused with LinkedIn? Is there like kind of like an outside the box technique or a feature or something that would be just like so easy, but so few people do this thing on LinkedIn?
Well, I'll tell you one that's kind of fun, that's fairly new, and that is, it's called video messaging. So, when you go to the menu at the top of your LinkedIn profile, you have the messaging button. Now you can't actually do this on a desktop. You can only do it on a mobile phone, but then it comes up in both places, desktop, laptop, phone, whatever. But you can go and send a message to someone and choose the opportunity to send a video message. So you turn your phone to a selfie mode, talk to the message, press send, and it goes. And when it goes into the messaging on all your devices, you can see it stand out from the crowd because it's a video and it's a message. Yeah. And I actually, when I was testing it, when it first came out, and sent a message on LinkedIn to a client of mine I hadn't talked to for a long time. I knew he'd like this. And so I sent him a video message, and he immediately sent me a message back. Okay, how did you do this? And then 5 minutes later, he figured it out and he did it. So he loved it. And so for the right people, just to get their attention, to me, that's a little bonus. The other thing I'll just mention is, you talked about, I know we're wrapping up, but you talked about LinkedIn Live. A lot of people thought that was going to be really cool, but it's the same as any other Facebook Live. You don't get a lot of people that come live when you're doing it. So it's never been a big thing for me, but what is coming and you should watch for is audio live, kind of like Clubhouse, their version of Clubhouse. And that might be kind of fun because we're podcasters, right? So it's another version of podcasting in a way.
There's always something new in it. And it seems like these platforms all have their own copycat. Like even Facebook is trying to do their own Clubhouse. And I heard something the other day where if these all these platforms are competing against each other, and when they come out with some new feature, it seems like they want to reward as many people as possible to be early adopters and show them more. So I keep trying to remember that lesson of like, well, they're all competing. They all see Clubhouse is huge, or they see, Periscope when that was huge. That's why these platforms always have live features, because they're all copying each other. So why not jump on these new features as soon as they come out? And so now you have me curious about how the video messages stand out. So I promise to you, I commit to you that as soon as we're done with this call, I'm going to change my profile picture because you told me to, and I will. But I'll also be sending you a video message just saying thanks for showing up, just so that I can see how it looks and how it stands out. And so that's cool just to try out, just for curiosity's sake, to see how it stands out. And that's yet another one of those forgotten techniques. I always forget how easy it is. Just record a quick 30, 60-second video for someone and send it out. It takes you no time at all. It stands out. Why not do it? Especially if the platform rewards you for doing it. So I'll be doing those two things as soon as we're done, especially to see that video message, see how it turns out. And so you've amazed me, and I'm sure that you've amazed the podcast listeners, and maybe given us that renewed excitement to do about 6 different things on our LinkedIn page and start using it and getting some results from it. So as we're winding down the end of our conversation here, what is the next step? If they said, man, Janice really knows her stuff when it comes to LinkedIn, how do I follow her more? How do I connect with her on LinkedIn, but anywhere else? How do I take the next step?
So I'm happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn and start a conversation. So I'm easy to find on there. It's just /Janice Porter. And I have a website, janiceporter.com. They can reach me at janice@janiceporter.com. And I'm happy to actually, if your listeners are interested, to give you a link to a free download with a checklist for what to do on their profile. But I work one-on-one with people because I love working with people from where they are and take them to where they need to be for their particular thing. I also, though, have a webinar, a public webinar happening on, I don't know when this will air, but on March 30th, which is a Thursday, and it's on Eventbrite. Make 2022 the year that LinkedIn works for you. You'll find it under my name. It's very low cost and an intro to me. And I actually have a bonus. I have a colleague in Australia who focuses on content. And so she's going to talk about content. I'm going to talk about the power of your profile and messaging. So there you go.
Amazing. So much going on. You said Janice Porter on LinkedIn, janiceporter.com. This webinar that's coming up on Eventbrite. And then to get that checklist, is that URL easily spoken, or is that just from your website?
It's from my website. Go to the LinkedIn services page. You'll see the download.
Fantastic. Well, you out there in podcast land, if you have not used LinkedIn yet today, or even in a while, then go to your account, log in, find Janice Porter, connect with her, send the message. That way you can see firsthand her working her relationship magic and actually paying attention, and her seeing what she notices on your profile, and figuring out your needs. And that way you can begin using this as a tool that works for you. That way it's not just yet another distraction, yet another place to see these live videos that only a few people watch, or cat videos or something like that. Imagine if you used LinkedIn to just close one deal per week or a handful of deals per month. You'd get excited. You use it over and over again. It would be a crucial part of your business. And you would be so glad that you paid attention to the episode today where Janice said, hey, LinkedIn's out there. You're not using it. You need to be using it. So go ahead, take action right now. Go to janiceporter.com and then add Janice Porter on LinkedIn, and then take the next step. And that's all you have to do. It takes you a couple of taps, a couple of clicks. It's done in a few minutes. And now you're kind of micro committed. You're subscribed. You're on your way to using LinkedIn as a tool. janiceporter.com. And we'll see you there. And thank you, Janice, for showing up and giving us a ton of cool ideas.
My pleasure.